One, we are live, sir. We are live.
Hello, good evening, everybody. All of those who have joined this call, thank you so much on a Sunday evening for you to be able to join this YouTube, Facebook Live, as well as webinar session. We have been at the Atal Innovation Mission, been getting you regularly with wonderful people who have accomplished so much in the technology world or in other areas of their capabilities and their expertise. And first of all, let me introduce myself. I am Ramanan, Mission Director of Atal Innovation Mission. And I do hope that every one of you who has logged onto this call is safe and healthy and following the guidelines, safety guidelines prescribed by the ministry as well as by the government and by our local health authorities. We have been organizing at Atal Innovation Mission thousands of tinkering labs across the country, as all of you are aware. And those of you who already are having Atal tinkering labs in your schools are all those teachers and participants and mentors who are also participating in this call. You would know the type of impact that the Atal tinkering labs has been creating on in creating a problem-solving, innovative mindset in our school students. And we have been introducing them to the latest of technologies, 3D printing, robotics, IoT, miniaturized electronics, augmented virtual reality, to name a few. And then subsequently, during the last 2 months, actually the Atal Innovation Mission has been very strongly involved in launching what are known as Tinker from Home modules. And these Tinker from Home modules include modules on artificial intelligence. They include modules on game development. There were 2 modules which were introduced on game development. There was a module introduced on 3D design called CollabCAD. And we also launched modules on digital creativity and skills. But during the course of the last 2 years, we have also been launching a number of modules which are of great interest and relevance to our times. And one of the modules that we had introduced along with Drona Aviation, a company which has been founded by one of the alumni of IIT Bombay, Apurv, who is on this call today. His company, and he is an IITB alumni, he has worked abroad and then came back with great interest in this new technology, which is changing a whole lot of things in the world. All of you who are aware, drone technologies are now becoming very, very relevant, especially during the COVID-19 times. Especially in advanced economies, they are already being used for delivering services, whether it is a packet that needs to be delivered, or whether there is some communication that needs to be done, surveillance that needs to be done, etc. The application of drone technology in every aspect of human life is present. If you are in the agricultural field, you need drones to be able to survey and look at large fields and be able to identify, for example, the status of the crops, the status of the soil, the status of any lost cattle, if you will. I mean, the number of applications that drone technology has in a simple field like agriculture is tremendous. If you look at defense and you look at military, they have tremendous usage for this. If you look at large surveys that you want to do where you cannot have human beings going easily, a survey of a hill, a survey of a forest, a survey of a waterlogged area. You know, when we are having disasters, for example, the cyclone or a typhoon or a flood, it is impossible for people to go to several places and assess what these damages could be. And in all of these areas, drones can come to the rescue. So it is not just from an e-commerce point of view, but also from a solution point of view, from a service point of view, from a social point of view. The relevance of drones in tomorrow's world is going to be tremendous. But I'm going to have the expert talk on this rather than me. We are very, very fortunate to have Apurva, who is not only a drone enthusiast, but he's an entrepreneur. He is a startup person. And you know, all of the things that we are doing in our Atal Tinkering Lab, we have now more than 5,000 tinkering labs across the country, and more than 2.5 million students are getting exposed to all these technologies so that they can use these emerging technologies which are cheap, available, they are affordable, advanced, but available. and they are available as do-it-yourself kits in your own school. And through this, you acquire the ability to tinker with them. Tinkering is so important. You start working with all these technologies. You start seeing how to put it together, how to create solutions. You look at problems around you and say, hey, why can't I use this particular problem? Why can't I use this particular technology to solve this particular problem? This problem is not yet solved. And so your mind starts becoming creative, you start becoming imaginative, and then you start becoming a problem solver. And from a problem solver, you become an innovator. From an innovator, you become an entrepreneur. From an entrepreneur, you become the head of a company, which is now becoming a multinational company. So that's the journey of an innovator. And I'm sure we are going to hear a lot more about that from Apurva. So also Apurva has been instrumental in creating the drone module, the ATL drone module, which many of you have used and are using. I know that many of the innovations that have happened in the Atal Tinkering Labs are drone related innovations. And Apurva, I want to thank you so much for having introduced the Atal Tinkering Lab students to the world of drones. So without more ado, without any further delay, I would like to introduce Apurva to you and have him introduce himself, share a little bit of his journey, and then Apurva, the floor is yours for you to be able to excite the imaginations of all the people who are here on this call and to get them to adopt and to start innovating with drone technology. Over to you, Apurva. Thank you so much for joining us on this particular call.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful introduction that you gave. It has been an honor working with the Atal Innovation Mission. The opportunities of creating something that reaches out to such a large audience is an honor, and it's a privilege in itself. Thank you for the opportunity for working with you. So, so to begin with, I'll kind of, I was wondering how to go about, telling a journey. So I thought a good way could be, why don't I tell us what our journey has been? How did we come to, start Drona Aviation? Our journey, our drone journey is almost 10 years old now. This was right from the time when we were students at IIT Bombay, and it's just the fun, the pleasure of seeing something that you have built fly. It's just amazing, and we did a lot of that back at our institute. What we realized, so we did that because we wanted to participate in a lot of drone competitions across the world, be it in France, in Spain, back here in Bangalore, in Mumbai, and we won awards at all of these places, right? But while building these drones, we realized that working with drones was fairly hard, right? The drones were expensive. The programming was just fragmented and really long. Any sort of crash would kind of kill us a little bit from within. And we as I said, it was just the joy of seeing the drone fly that pushed us to go beyond one barrier after another. And that's when we realized that, thankfully, we had the backing of IIT Bombay at that time, which is why we could also push through this. But then we realized that unless these hurdles are, eliminated, and we build a platform with which people can work with, uh, it will remain like a hobby of the few, of the few elite colleges across, in India, rather than being something that is in the hands of every student out there. At the same time, what we saw was there was very interesting things that were happening in other parts of the world. We got to see that Massimo Banzi and his team were building the Arduino in through Italy, and they were simplifying learning electronics, simplifying prototyping of ideas on top of it, using that platform, be it the API structure, the plug and play way of working, and that was like a very powerful tool. Why was it powerful? It not only allowed the students to work with it or the engineers to work with it, but even artists who had zero tech background to work with it. Similarly, we saw interesting work being done by Raspberry Pi in the field of computing and IoT. Uh, they simplified learning IoT, learning computing, building some ideas. In fact, they evolved at a pace that they have started deploying in industries. And that's what gave us the vision of what we really want to do in the drone space. We wanted to build a platform that can simplify drone learning for absolutely anyone who wants to tinker around with them. Something that you can learn drones, learn from concepts with, get the, enjoy building the drone, enjoy flying the drone, and then as a next level, work with programming the drone to build your own ideas on top of it. Be it a simplified software interface, simplified hardware to work with, and we had to make sure that we keep it low cost enough so that it can reach to a really, really large number of students out there. And that has broadly been the genesis of how we, started our journey as tinkerers, students, people having fun with it, leading us to being entrepreneurs in the field of drones. In fact, my co-founder Prasanna has been leading all of these teams, and he has been deep diving in all of this, and we've been working with him to make this happen.
Great, great, wonderful. So, Apurva, you shared about how you have gone about in getting an interest in drone technology and what you have been doing, and the impact that it can potentially have, and the areas that you focus on. How do you make it affordable, low cost, so that it becomes a practical, viable solution? But tell us a little more about, when did you start getting interested in drones? There are so many technologies to get interested in today. One would like to get interested in artificial intelligence. One would like to get interested in, let's say, IoT technologies and all of that. But there is a little bit of everything in a drone, isn't it? So tell us a little bit about, because we have very young students from grade 6 onwards who are out there. And from in my own world, I mean, if I was a young lad today, even at this age, I get very excited about these technologies. But if I was a young boy, and we always had a fascination of, whenever there is a plane flying, we used to go running and see the plane flying, or a helicopter, even more exciting. And a drone, which is so close to you compared to a helicopter or to a aeroplane, that's something that you are actually seeing and you're able to control. So I think the sense of excitement of being able to control a flying object like that can let your imagination fly. But at the end of the day, it is not about just flying some particular object. It is with a purpose, and there is a purpose behind it, and there is a function, and there is a problem that can be solved using that flying object, right? And you integrate so many technologies in that. And today, so tell us a little bit of what excited you on this journey, and then where this today, in terms of drone technology, how advanced it is, because it is no longer a nascent technology, right? At the same time, also share some of the challenges that have not yet been solved, so that our students who are listening onto this can say, hey, we can probably be the solution provider for these problems or these challenges. So it would be great to hear that. And then, of course, then Ronak will continue to ask you a little more questions. I may have to step off in between for another webinar. So please go ahead.
Absolutely. So let me address this in two parts. First is how did we get excited about drones, and the second bit is where do we see the applications in the coming time. Um, so uh, so we are three co-founders at Drona Aviation. There's me, Prasanna, and Dinesh. All three of us had a different set of reasons of what excited us. Like me personally, I have always been fascinated by all things that fly. If I were to be granted a superpower, obviously flying would be the number one thing I would choose for. In fact, when I was a little kid, I actually wanted to start an airline company just because I could fly. Because at that time like that's how I wanted to go about doing it before I quote unquote grew up. In case of Prasanna and Dinesh, they had been working at the MAV lab at IIT Bombay. We were fortunate enough that we had some seniors who also were working on drones. In fact, one team of seniors actually went on to start a drone company of their own, which is fairly successful presently in the field of defense. So we had some sort of an inspiration where we could learn from uh, working in the field of drones. So that is one place that got Prasanna very, very excited. on working with drones, building them, flying them, especially since he was from the aerospace department himself. Dinesh Sen, who was also aerospace student, they, he got excited because he was a part of the aero modeling club of IIT Bombay. Here you build simple planes and fly them with either with a remote control or just without a remote control. That's basically where the love or the excitement about flying really came about. And once when I came back to India, I got a chance to kind of work with them, and we realized that we had very strong common interests, which we could then mold together with a lot of brainstorming to get it, to get into starting a drone company. Like that's broadly where we got very excited about drones before starting to fly them. In fact, I before I started the company, I also had one of the earliest versions of aerial cinematography drones. I got one of that, I believe, in the year 2012. I think that was one of the earliest version of consumer drones used for aerial photography. So I think that was another place where we were really motivated to just start working on drones and building something out of it. Now comes to the exciting part, which is what can really drones be about. And as you rightly said, it's not just a product it's not just a machine that flies. There's so much more. Let me put it this way: if I were to ask, have you heard of internet today? Uh, your answer would be obviously yes. But then you would counter question me saying, what sort of a stupid question is that? Right? Because it's just so omnipresent today in all the tech world. I think that's this question was still a valid question around 15, 20 years back, where internet, where you could classify like a company as an internet company, which hey, which just chat, the email, and everything else, everything under the sky went under it. But the internet itself evolved so very well that you had so many different ideas, different applications that could be deployed on internet just as a platform, right? And that's where we are in the field of drones today. Drone is a platform, uh, and a whole bunch of applications are going to come up in the field where I believe 5 to 10 years down the line, you would not be just a drone company, but you would be, say, a healthcare company that uses drones, or you would be like, hey, a first responders or a firefighting company that uses drones, and so on and so forth. Like that's how we will see the evolution of drones in times to come. The drone technology, like a bunch of other technologies, came from the space of defense, which is why defense today constitutes a large chunk of applications and ideas that come out of it. It could start right from assault-based drones or drones for surveillance for the armed forces for the longer distance. From there came the consumer sort of use cases where you use drones for aerial photography, aerial cinematography. I believe the largest drone company in the world also started with you making drones for aerial photography and cinematography. So that's kind of working well. And then what I personally am very excited about are drones for racing, because they just way too fun. Where you have the FPV goggles and you're flying drones in the arena racing with each other. Those are like they're just way too exciting. And then come the drones for problem solving, and I think that is where a whole bunch of us, would continuously be thinking on what possibly can be done on them. Um, so right now, drones. Sorry, I think you are under mute. I can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry. You have raised a very important concept here, which I think is very valuable to everyone, and that is drone is a platform. Just like the internet was a platform on which many solutions could be built, and different solutions for different verticals and different users, type of users, find the internet as a platform to be able to provide solutions. So also the drone is actually a platform, and on that platform you can have solutions for different verticals. Now if I take a country like India, right, let's say we take 5 of the vertical areas. One is how can drones help in agriculture? We are a 44% agri economy based country. So tell us how drones can help in agriculture. The second is, which you also identified very importantly, was defense and space, right? What is it that drones can do, help the defense, which is very important for us to be able to protect our borders and be able to, at least from preventive point of view. The third is in healthcare. How can drones help in healthcare, right? Because healthcare, again, we have so many. We have a country with 733 districts. We have 600,000 villages. It is many times difficult for government officials or even corporates to actually go and find out what's the particular situation in a particular village. So how can that help? Then the fourth area is we are talking about smart cities, smart infrastructure. The Prime Minister also said that one of the pillars for our growth is going to be infrastructure, and we want smart infrastructure. But how can drones help in creating that smart infrastructure, smart cities, so that we don't have 8 tier 1 cities like Bombay, but we have hundreds of smart cities where you have innovation and going on. So if you take these four examples, it would be great for you to suggest to all of us here, how drones can be applied for as a platform to create solutions in all of these areas.
Awesome, awesome. So broadly speaking, you are looking at two sort of use cases on drones, which can then be sort of applied in all of the use cases that you are going to work with in drones. The first one is where drone is used as a data collection device, a remotely operated data collection device. And the second one is where you are going to use a drone to carry an object from one place to another. So if you look at most of the applications that we have, and I am imagining in the time to come, will be broadly classified into these two areas, right? Now, again, let me start with the agriculture bit. That's very so. Two areas, especially in the Indian context, are very exciting to me. One is agriculture, and one is infrastructure, smart cities, and otherwise. In the agricultural space, one of the issues or two of the issues that uh, our farmers face today is a low crop yield, where wherein they're attacked by pests. There may be insufficient water, or there may be excessive use of water. There may be excessive use of fertilizer, or maybe insufficient use of fertilizer. A drone can actually be used to map using a regular camera or a multispectral camera to detect areas around which there might be some sort of stress, like low water or low, any sort of pest attack, or maybe it requires some fertilizers. Any sort of data that you collect like this will actually allow you to economize your use of water. It will help you reduce the use of pesticides. It will help you reduce the use of fertilizers, right? And if you are able to do that and improve the crop yield, there is a very that's a very large value addition for the farmer, right? What you also this is like the first the data collection sort of use case. The second one, which is also there, is spraying of pesticides. Instead of spraying it all over indiscriminately, using the precision agriculture, you can spot areas which need uh, some spray of pesticides, and instead of you going manually, you can actually have a drone that can be used to spray pesticides. If you check out the farmers in Punjab, where there has been some indiscriminate use of pesticides, there is actually a very high prevalence of cancer. There is unfortunately something called as a cancer train, which goes from Punjab to Bhilwara in Rajasthan every day. Incidents like these can be reduced significantly both by the use of precision agriculture as well as using drones for pesticide spraying. One question that comes up in this context is, oh, but the villagers or the farmers, will they be able to afford something like this? The answer is absolutely. Uh, this is not something that every individual farmer might want to keep for himself and operate for himself, but this can actually be used at the gram panchayat level, where you have, let's say, one drone operator who's doing both the precision farming as well as spraying for all the villages, sorry, for all the farms that are there in the village. Uh, this way, you can actually achieve economies of scale. We have seen, we've seen the economies of sharing that have come up in the space of cabs, in the space of hotels and other, and you can see the economies of sharing coming up in the area of agriculture by the use of drones. And lot of value addition that drones can bring in this manner in the space of agriculture. The second space where I see a very large potential for drones to come in is the space of infrastructure and infrastructure, smart cities, and land surveying. Sorry, before I move to the infrastructure bit, I want to go back to the agriculture portion for just one bit. As I mentioned, there are the precision agriculture as well as spraying that can be done there. And at the gram panchayat level, what the government is doing right now is it has put out a mandate where all of these villages in India will be mapped using drones. And once you have this sort of a database, you will not only be able to make help the farmers get a better out yield. But what you also see is you can make some very good policy decisions. How do you go about distributing, let's say, a farm relief, or maybe if you want to give out farm subsidies, how do you go about distributing them? You have the jam trinity that's there, and if you can link it with the data that you have collected using the drone survey, you can be very, very targeted in the way you distribute your subsidies to the farmers without, where it reaches to the end, to the poorest farmer who is there in those villages, and not just to the rich farmers who are the beneficiaries of this. Right? So this way there is a very, very strong use case of drones in agriculture and drones in the rural areas in general. Now let me come to the second portion, which is the use of drones in infrastructure and smart cities. Um, what we've seen, and I'm a civil engineer by education myself. So land surveying is a very, very important component of any portion of civil engineering, be it building of apartments or building of infrastructure, roads, bridges, tunnels. What the process of the land surveying for such a project is extremely painful, and it takes a really long time, a lot of man hours to get that happening. If you have drone based land surveying, a process that you would take you maybe 2, 3, 4 days of time can actually be finished in a period of half an hour to 1 hour, and with some data, with some image processing, you have the results very, very quickly at a very, very economical rate. The important part about economical rate is that it's scalable to the entire country of India. Every city in India can actually be mapped using drones, which will again help you in land digitization of land records, and taking policy decisions much better in that manner. So there is a very, very strong use case in the real estate industry, in the infrastructure industry, uh, so that we can do targeted spendings very, very well there. And personally speaking, I see this as one of the largest area where drones are going to make an impact in the times to come. So that's the smart city is where you'll see application of drones. In the space of defense, we already have a lot of work that has been done and is now going to be done in this space where you have drones that are being used for surveillance. There are some assault drones that have also been procured by the country. That is one space where we can have some of our students who can start contemplating and looking towards building drones that can service that use case. What we can also see is, just to give you a perspective, carrying of goods from one place to another is very cumbersome and very difficult, especially in the border areas. To give you a perspective, it costs us anywhere between 1 to 1.5 crores every day to carry goods and supplies to our soldiers who are sitting at the dangerous position of the Siachen Glacier. Uh, could you build something like a drone that can simplify and reduce the risk of transporting those goods to that place? Okay, forget about Siachen Glacier, maybe somewhere closer by. Can you build something that can carry a lot of payload for our soldiers who are sitting at the borders and do it safely? That's a very strong use case that I see in the space of defense coming up in some time. What, then there are other spaces like field of entertainment, where drones are used for aerial cinematography, aerial photography, uh, and a bunch of host of other use cases. Like drones can be used for by first responders, where a firefighter does not have to go in blind when there is a fire in a building. He could either fly a drone closer to that floor, or maybe just send a nano drone that climbs up the stairs, like flies up all the stairs and goes to the location and sends him feedback about the precise location of the fire that is going to so that he can address that situation with a much more informed manner. Um, you can also look at usage of drones in lifeguarding. Lifeguarding is very difficult because you have very small amount of time and a large distance to cover. Ideas like that can also be deployed to save a lot of lives at the beaches. And again, I personally am going really crazy while thinking about all these ideas. But put it this way: drone is again this platform. What is your idea that you can build on it and deploy and bring value to all of your users? That's a question I would kind of float to all of our students. Mona? Hi, Mona, can you hear me? Hey, Mona, can you hear me?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yes.
Yes, definitely, definitely. I think that so now thank you so much for sharing such a beautiful insight about drones. Uh, the follow-up question categorically for Atal Tinkering Labs is tinkering and drones. When we had created this drone module, what was the initial thought process behind this, and how does making a drone make you a better tinker? Can you please shed some light on this?
Yes. So, if you look at drones and how the drones work and how they operate, uh, you have a multiple, you have so many fields of engineering that come in for a drone to actually fly and drone to actually work. You have areas from mechanical engineering where you're using motors that work with it. You have areas of the electronics where all of the sensors come in. You have areas of computing, all programming of the drone that comes in. You're also looking at when you come at the application space, you're looking at image processing based use cases. You're looking at possibly, as I mentioned, land surveying based use cases where you can have a civil engineer who can come and work with drones. Point being, uh, once you are able to understand, work with the concepts of drones, you get the chance to touch a wide variety of fields and get a product that is a hybrid between so many different fields of education. In fact, going down the line, you will also see a lot of artists who are working with drones to create some amazing artistic imagery and videos. That is the bit what excites me most about the drones. The fact that it is not it brings in the values from so many other places, which then makes working with tinkering with other platforms a lot more simpler. Put it this way: if you've already learned how to ride a motorcycle, riding a bicycle after that becomes a piece of cake. So when you work with drones and you have flown them, working with tinkering with other platforms becomes so much simpler, and so much, it just makes you think. It just helps you to think of problem statements in an entirely different domain. That is what brings the value to this entire tinkering process.
Oh, nice. It was really insightful to hear your points. Now, since we are in the interest of time, we'll proceed with some of the questions from our audience.
Super.
How do we actually make a drone? Like how does a student goes to his tinkering lab and actually go ahead and actually try to make a drone? This is a question that we are getting a lot from our audience.
Mm-hmm.
So where can you basically, so what is the journey? How can you find the resources? What are the right resources? How can you code? What resources are available online and offline? And let's say at this particular point of time, if the students have to go back to the adult tinkering lab and they wish to make a small drone, what would be what can they do? How they can actually get or procure resources, make a tiny drone for themselves, and try to
Got it.
fly it and try to actually work with it.
Got it. So I believe the module that we have created is the ideal starting point for anyone who wants to work with drones, right? Uh, go through the module that will get you prepared with the basics of what drones are. Also, what helps is just getting a drone and flying it. Like, forget about making it for some time. Just check out any drone that's nearby. Attempt to fly it. You'll fly it. You'll crash it, and that's fine. Once you get the feel of it, then you have the motivation to start now attempting to work towards these problem statements. Now, what you have are these multiple components to the drone, right? Starting from the motors, the frame, the autopilot, the propellers, and so on and so forth. If I were a student right now, the way I would go about tinkering with them is, well, maybe first start with trying with a new frame design on an available, DIY sort of a tool. Try a new design, 3D printed, try setting up the PIDs and getting that to fly. Maybe increase the length of the arms of it and try out with bigger propellers. Try to work with newer motors. Again, the same motors. If it's a brush DC you're working with, then a bigger brush DC. If it's a brushless DC, then maybe a bigger brushless DC, and so on and so forth. That's how I would go about working with A, where you have one fixed autopilot that you are working with, and using that autopilot, you are playing with the other different components, uh, and starting to build your own sort of a drone in that process. That would be step number one. Step number two would be go ahead and program your drone to do very simple basic things. In fact, forget about the drone. Just open it up, look at the drone, and write very basic lines of code to maybe, I don't know, get the LED to blink, or maybe just um, get to work with the sensors. Right, like a good chunk of these have the pressure sensor. So write a piece of code where you, let's say, blow air on the autopilot, and then the do something. It can be as simple as blinking an LED light or getting a motor to rotate. That makes you comfortable with the ideas of how a drone really works, right? The intricacies of drone working. There are some complex control systems that work with it, but once you start doing these simple experiments, you get a grip on understanding these concepts, and that's now you are getting deep down from in your journey from being a tinkerer towards being a developer, right? And that's when, as a next step, you can consider moving. Let's say, look at a slightly bigger autopilot, maybe where you are trying to attach some payload on it with some extra motor drivers. You will try to say pick up something, and while you are in the air, use that motor driver to drop something, right? So those sort of exercises will then start coming into picture. Um, when you are at the tinkering lab, you have access to a bunch of, let's say, servo motors, or you have 3D printers. These are some of the basic experiments that you can work with. And once you are comfortable with concepts like these, ideas like this, that the next step for this will be then starting to work with slightly bigger drones, something that has an ESC with it, with brushless DC motors, right? Or even in brush DC motors, you have bigger frames that you can work with, carry some payload, and try doing some things. The next step that we would, and in fact, I'm happy to float this idea with you guys, wherein you have newer localization sensors. Localization sensor is a sensor where um, which tells you where you are and what's your environment. A typically used sensor, localization sensor in a bigger drone, is something like a GPS. In something like a smaller drone, you use possible sensors like optic flow sensors, sometimes distance sensors. Start trying to tinker with them, maybe attach them, try to see what sort of data they give back. Is there some way that you can read how much distance that the drone has been able to go forward, back, left, or right? How is it working? Also get a chance to see if you can observe what sort of motor RPMs are you looking at. Again, motor RPMs are not something that you can measure directly from the drone, but there are some devices that can help you see those. Can you get one of those devices? Can you build one of those devices? Ideas like these can come where you can go ahead and build those things. I believe in our tinkering labs, we have uh, we have nano drones, a bunch of nano drones that the students are working with. Can you modify them and make a racing drone? Like, what can be more exciting than that? There are some FPV cameras and FPV goggles available out there. Can you attach them and build your own racing arena? Like, ideas like that can be super, super exciting. And in the pursuit of which you will start facing some hurdles. And when you start solving these hurdles, you will really start deep diving into the concepts of drone building. Uh, that is broadly how I would do if I were a thinker right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Apurva. There's one follow-up question from one of our students. Can we actually make the drone chassis from the 3D printer which is available in the Atal Tinkering Lab?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. If you have a DIY drone that you are working with, you can work with the same set of autopilots, same set of motors, propellers, and print your own designs and work with them. You can, and you should absolutely do those experiments.
Time, we will take a final question. This final question is from one of the students again, and they are asking. This is actually from a lot of the students. One of them is Vishweshwar. How is actually drone technology being can be useful in such a pandemic situation? What kind of applications can be used where we are able to use this technology in a better manner, and it benefits the whole community immensely. Can you
So,
please shed some light on this?
absolutely, absolutely. In fact, the Drone Federation of India recently released a video, and in fact, they're working closely with the Mumbai police on the deployment of drones for the COVID situation. When the lockdown was announced, a good chunk of people stayed at homes and complied with the lockdown. But then there were still some areas where uh, where there was either non-compliance, or people weren't so sure about the you know how what does a lockdown mean. And that's when we had the uh, we had the community of drone freelancers who collaborated together with the police departments across the country. They worked with them in a couple of ways. The first one was they just went to their own terraces, flew the drone in their own areas and nearby, and they were just able to tell the police that there is this and this area, specific area, where we see a group of people crowding around, and you know that that informed the police of the areas in which there might be non-compliance. In a manner, you had this small group of police force that was working with a large group of freelancers that were able to work with and inform the police. So they didn't have to spread themselves too thin. They were able to reach out only to the areas that were uh, non-compliant. At the same time, we had another use case where we had large drones fitted with a megaphone and a camera that flew into areas, crowded areas, announcing to people what really needs to be done. Uh, they were clearly told that, we see a lot of people here, you guys are not following. I see you, you are in red shirt. If you don't comply right away, then we may have to take action. Once that sort of a clear communication went out to the police, without requiring police to go into the crowds, we saw a lot of compliance that came into being, and that is something that we saw a lot of deployment of drones in the COVID situation. Now, what we will see in future is in the space of healthcare and even in otherwise, you will see some sort of hub-to-hub deliveries that will come in the uh, space of drones. Now, what do I mean? We require a lot of say medicines and other healthcare supplies that need to be transported over a larger distance, uh, where there might not be enough manpower or enough connectivity or so on and so forth. You can actually imagine drones flying from one hub of one part of the city, going longer distance, carrying a lot of these supplies, and say dropping in a gram panchayat in a village, which can then be distributed to uh, you know the citizens nearby. At the same time, you might be able to see uh, there are actually experiments going on. A few of the drone manufacturers and drone companies have received permissions to conduct these specific experiments to fly beyond the visual line of sight. And these sort of experiments will now take a lot of will take shape, especially in the post-COVID scenario where we are trying to minimize contact between the people. Uh, these are two areas that I can clearly see the usage of drones. More will come up as soon as new ideas from the students who are watching us right now flow out.
Okay, thank you so much, Apurva. So with that, we would like to conclude today's tinkering session, which is about tinkering with drone technology. Can you share a part with?
Sure, sure. Uh, yes, sure. Thank you, Ronak. Thanks for firstly having me. It is always fun to talk with the students out there. Again, I probably gave that message earlier also, and I'm going to give it again. Uh, we saw the evolution of internet in the last 20-25 years to be, for internet just being something where you exchange messages and exchange photos to applications that are changing the world today and will continue to change in the times to come. In fact, it is because of internet that we are able to handle the COVID situation much better than we could have otherwise imagined. Similar ideas and applications will come in the space of drones. Drones, while now being a product or a value proposition in itself, will soon become drone platforms where ideas that you guys have in mind or the problems that you face and attempt to solve, drones will then become the platforms which will help you solve the problems. So if you can focus on what problem you want to solve, then you can start thinking back on, oh, can I use a drone to solve this problem? And that's one way that you can build some really effective drone applications in the time to come. I think broadly that's the that's the message that I would like to leave you guys with.
Thank you so much, Apurv, for your time today. To all the students and to all the teachers, thank you so much for your time as well. We were not able to take all of your questions, unfortunately, but that's completely fine. Our team will respond to your respective questions on the comment section.
Thank you,
We
Ronak,
hope
for having. Yes, please continue.
with that, I would like all of you for your. I would like to thank all of you for your time. Uh, do visit the AIM website. You can find the Drone module there. It's completely free to use. If you have any queries, please let us know. In case if you wish to watch a lot of more videos and know more about the modules and know about more about the webinar series that we are conducting, please have a look at our AIM website, our YouTube page, and our Facebook social media handle. Further, all the ATL in charges and all the schools are getting regular emails about these various courses and these various webinar sessions. So in case you are interested to join any of these exciting webinar sessions, you can get in touch with your ATL in charge. With that, this is Drona Joshua signing off. Thank you so much for your time. Happy tinkering, and like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thank you so much, Apurva, once again for your time.
Thank you, Ronak, for having me. It was a pleasure.